This is the most dangerous man in professional wrestling, Agent Orange Juice Jennings, the real OCW champion, and you are listening to Wrestling Cheers.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they'll always let you can. You wanna go where people know, people will always say. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
And welcome back to Wrestling Cheers, right here on the brand new TrendingTopicsNetwork.com. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers. Wrestling, I don't know why I said that, but Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and on Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. And we have a little bit of a treat for you this week, a little bit something different to talk about. Of course, this is Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, even if you're part of the other side of the state. I'm completely screwing up. I'm not feeling really good right now. You can probably hear it in my voice, but I'm better than what I've done the past couple of days. But, you know, this week we have a special guest. I did mention it last week for anybody who has listened, and this has been on the docket since about August. And I am joined by a friend of the show that you hear me always talk about every week, at least put at least a little plug. We have Andy from Road Home from Wrestling.
That's right. It's awesome to finally be on the Wrestling Cheers podcast where everybody knows your name. And, you know, man, it was so great to meet you. We met at the Catalina Wrestling Mixer down at Rockstar Pro for Wrestling Revolver. And it was great to meet you and sit with you and enjoy some pro wrestling. And it's always awesome to talk to folks that are, you know, of like mind, you know, with this business of pro wrestling. It's pretty awesome.
It was great for me to finally just get down to that area. I was actually listening to an episode when I changed the name to Wrestling Cheers, and I mentioned how I have never really got outside of my area. And I think the first place I mentioned, like, I haven't been down to Dayton for Rockstar. I mean, granted, it was an official Rockstar Pro show, but still, it's still at the arena, a lot of the same wrestlers, and it was kind of a joint show. So it was actually cool to show up knowing a bunch of wrestlers that were there, so I didn't feel totally out of my mix. Listening to your show helped me know who certain people were. Like, maybe I didn't have a face to place to certain people, but that was a fun show. I like to come back again. I think I forget who I was talking with this about. It might have been Bruce Gray, and that was like when I went to Rockstar. The next day, me and my girlfriend, we went to the Columbus Zoo. So we're talking about maybe some other time in the future, we go to Rockstar and then we go to maybe the Cincinnati Zoo. Or then maybe we go to the Toledo Zoo. Like, kind of like mix in some wrestling and then go to the zoo the next day. So, like, we're both happy.
Hey, that Cincinnati Zoo is pretty sweet. I think Kevin Owens loves that one. But, you know, well, man, you know, like I said, it was great to meet you and great to share, you know, the place that we one of the places we call home down here. We're, you know, based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, but it's just a short drive up north to Dayton. You know, if you guys don't know anything about our show, you know, what we do is we cover live wrestling on the way home from the show. Quite literally, we jump in the car and start recording right then and there. And we talk all about what we just have seen. And, you know, a lot of times we have wrestlers who maybe were even in the main event riding with us. So, you know, it's a pretty unique kind of deal that we do. And we're really, really proud of what we've been able to do.
And it's especially a one of a kind show. I mean, it's a very easy thing to do. I know for me, like, I'm just more of a perfectionist when it comes to audio, but like your audio really isn't that bad. I mean, there was points where it was, but that's when you were actually you were trying to make it sound better, but you actually made it sound worse. And how someone does that is freaking crazy. But it's just one of those things.
Well, we thought, we kind of experimented with the sound a few times, and eventually we just figured out that, you know, the more sensitive a microphone, the more outside noise it was going to pick up. We're in a car. I mean, there's no way to eliminate the road noise, but at the same time, we needed something that had enough kind of ambient pickup, so to speak, to pick up the voices real strong too. So, the system we got right now works pretty damn good. And some of the shows I am really proud of the audio, actually, because I do a lot of kind of, splicing in little character things that we do and music and whatnot that I'm probably going to get sued for one day. But so far, so good.
I think the worst thing that you could ever have on your show is rain. Like, I know in the spring, like when it rains like the most, like I remember some of those episodes, like it's nothing you can do, but like rain's coming down and it kind of brings you into the show because we all know what that sounds like. We all know what it's like to drive in the rain. I think it adds a whole different vibe to the show.
Well, I mean, it's cheesy, but it's true. I mean, the kind of idea is that, hey, you're sitting in the back seat, and you're talking with your friends or who are us about the pro wrestling show that you didn't go to because you missed it. But we also have a lot of folks that like to listen to the show that do go to the shows. Like, for example, we cover the monthly iPay-per-views for Rockstar Pro, and a lot of people come out of the woodwork just for those monthly shows. And when almost every single one of those people listen to our show because they want to hear our thoughts and see if they match up with what they thought or whatever the case may be. Plus, we're pretty damn funny, too. So there is that as well.
I think, I don't know how you guys do it with, you guys have Rockstar every single week. And then there's those times that you have another show on Friday. Like, I get, one a month and I'm fine. But with as many, so you guys, I'm like, God damn, one a week, and then there's a week that you have two, and then sometimes that might be actually two shows for the whole weekend on top of the regular AMP taping. I don't know what I do, especially with my work schedule.
Well, I mean, we just this past week, Wednesday, we went to Rockstar Pro. Now, we've just recently opened up the Indiana chapter of our podcast, which is kind of the original dream of the podcast was to kind of have chapters all over the country, covering, doing our show, basically covering indie events all over the country, maybe even WWE events or whatever, just live wrestling. And so we met a couple guys at IWA Mid-South. They were interested in doing the show. They are amazing. And so what we'll do is that Wednesday night we'll go to Rockstar Pro. Thursday they send me their version of the show, which I post Friday morning. Mm-hmm. Then Saturday I attend Northern Wrestling Federation, usually in Elmwood Place, Ohio, or in Fairfield, Ohio. And then Sunday, every other Sunday, we go to Primetime Wrestling, a PTW in Georgetown, Kentucky. So that's just the normal stuff. Some weeks there is that iPay-per-view as well. And listen to this, dude. You're not gonna believe this. And if I am a zombie at Hell on Earth, you will know why. Is that Wednesday night I'm going to Rockstar Pro next week, right? Mm-hmm. And then Thursday night is Thanksgiving. There's a huge show at IWA Mid-South with Aaron Williams facing Jimmy Jacobs for the IWA Mid-South world title. And, Aaron's the current champion and has been for a long time, and he rarely loses. And, it's one of those deals where, that I got to be there for that. So I'm going to make my triumphant return to IWA that night. Then Friday, I'm driving up to Cleveland to come see you and go see Hell on Earth. Saturday night, I'm going to return back to Cincinnati to go see the big 22nd anniversary show for NWF. And then Sunday, I'm going to chill the fuck out and not watch any wrestling. So
watch the Browns at the Bengals.
Okay.
That is that weekend.
I'll take a nap during it probably. So.
Well, you'll be able to see the Bengals win, so.
Hey, maybe.
Maybe.
I used to be a humongous NFL fan, and I still am. I really like the NFL. I really like football, just period. But I found that, at times I would have my self-worth would be tied to how the team did. And I started to realize, especially in a city like Cincinnati where, we're just perennial losers when it comes to, championships and whatnot. Is I started to realize I should expect nothing from my sports teams. And then when they win, I'm happy about it. And when they lose, I don't give a shit. So that's kind of my whole thought process with Cincinnati sports. And that could serve you well up there in Cleveland,
I mean, it could, but I'm also looking at a 2016 NBA championship hat and T-shirt that I keep hung up as a reminder that at least one of my teams has won a championship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only been one, but
I mean, when I was 10 years old, the Reds went wire to wire and won the World Series, and that was the last time anything amazing like that's happened around here. But you know, I hate to tell you this, man. I don't know what kind of heat I'm going to get for this, but I can't stand the Cavs, man. I can't stand them. I like the Boston Celtics, and so I don't know if that makes us enemies now, but I don't know, dude. I just hate them so much. I'm sorry.
I don't know. The last couple of years, we kind of hate the Celtics too, especially when I always forget the player's name, the one that broke Kevin Love's arm and potentially ruined our chances to win the championship that year. I mean, it didn't help that Kyrie Irving went down in the next series and was maybe did he play a little bit in the finals? I can't remember. I just remember we won I think 2 games in the finals that year, and that was a miracle in itself. But to be able to come back the next year after being down 3-1, like I remember after that game, I was like, it's over. And then we won one. I was like, all right, they're gonna win the next one. Then we won. So then it was 3-3 going into Game 7. I'm like, well, this is typical Cleveland fashion. We lose Game 7. It happened again later with the World Series, so it's like, this is what I'm kind of used to. And I actually had on, because I had 2 TVs in my room at the time, and, I brought one up, my old TV, just for this particular moment. I had Money in the Bank on one and the finals on the other. I think I had one of them muted. I can't remember which one. I think it was I had the game muted, but I could listen to what was going on with Money in the Bank. That was also the same day Dean Ambrose won, which I had been calling for months at that time, and he cashed in later that night, and then the icing on the cake, right? I don't know actually if it was before or after the cash in, but when the Cavs won. To me, that was amazing. I may never see it again. And I think I would feel happier to see the Browns do it because I'm a big football fan. I don't link, my self-worth to the Browns because I think the Browns have been bad for so long. Like, we feel good when they win.
Yeah.
Some people feel bad when they lose, but I just go, okay, that's the Browns. I'm used to it now. Like,
yeah, you know what you're doing.
Like, we watched a lot of games this year where they were close to winning and something happened, no matter what it was. And a lot of people I know have gotten upset and mad. I'm just like, yeah, I was expecting that. Like, okay, fine. I'll take more draft picks. Let's rack them up. We seem to be drafting better, and our defense is a whole hell of a lot better this year. I mean, we're better against the run. We still got to work on the pass, but still, that's progress. That's the one thing you can ask for.
Wow, you are a Browns fan through and through, man. It's always next year, right?
Well,
I'm sorry, buddy. The factory of sadness churns it out every year, and I lost a bet. I think it was last year or the year before, the year that you guys had RG3, right? And I made a bet with somebody that he would never play a down in the regular season, that he would get murdered in the preseason and die. And I think he got injured on the first series of like the first game or something like that and never played again for the rest of the season. And I lost the bet. I was pissed.
It was something like that, especially with the season before that. Josh McCown was running in a touchdown, almost ran in a touchdown against of all teams right now, the Jets. And he got hit and did this like helicopter spin and was out for I forget how many games. So it's like so ironic now that he's with that team, but we've been riddled with a lot of, injuries and whatnot. I think the smartest thing I ever did as a Browns fan is I bought a personalized jersey, and not just a regular personalized jersey. I bought top of the line $300 jersey. And the reason why I did that is because I bought 2 jerseys prior to that, both about $150 a piece. One Joshua Cribbs, which I'm also looking at right now.
Oh, I liked him. He was great.
I have it signed by him twice.
Nice.
So that's a big thing. But the other one was a Johnny Manziel jersey, and that, what for a long time was sitting in a dresser drawer just collecting dust. But I found a really cool company that does part of the tailgating with the Browns or whatever, and they will repurpose your jersey. They will put a new nameplate on the back. Well, my Cribbs one is fine. It's signed. I'm happy with it. But the Manziel one, I'm never going to get it signed. It's just sitting there. So I took it to a game, and I got my last name put on the back. So now I have technically 2 personalized jerseys. But I looked at it like I wasted close to $300 between 2 jerseys that I don't wear now. I'm just going to spend another $300 and I'm never going to have to buy another jersey ever again.
Yeah, I only have one jersey and one piece of Bengals gear, really, and it's the ultimate. What I wish I had is a Flying Brian jersey. That would be tremendous.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think those don't exist. But but the one I have is Carl Pickens, who was kind of a legendary kind of shit heel guy, and so I get a lot of laughs when I wear that one. But he was a great receiver too. But anyway, man. Speaking of Cincinnati and Dean Ambrose, you were talking about, he happens to be from down here, and a lot of the folks that are kind of the staples there at Rockstar Pro, they all came up with him, so I get a lot of great stories about him and the HWA days, which was this kind of joint promotion between what is now the NWF and what became Rockstar Pro, and that's where the Chryst started. That's where Aaron Williams started. It was a promotion started by Les Thatcher in that MTV I Want to Be a Pro Wrestler thing that everybody's seen. That's the promotion that Les Thatcher's running is an HWA there in Norwood, and that's where Dean Ambrose got his start. So we have a lot of deep roots here in Cincinnati with pro wrestling, but it all starts around that time. As far as like the modern take, and there was a long time where Cincinnati really wasn't much of a territory. It was just kind of they ran some shows in some halls, right? But now it's fun. When I first started the podcast, I wanted to reach out to some of the people that started independent pro wrestling. So I got Les Thatcher's email off of his Twitter account, I think, and I emailed him, and he's become a good friend of mine. It's so crazy how this works out. And I've gone over to his house and watched old matches and stuff, and it's just nuts, man. You're hanging out with somebody who had their first match in 1960, and it's really, really fun stuff. And we got a lot of really great stories, like the time my co-host went over to Les Thatcher's house to fix his toilet. It's just a lot of great stuff. We've had a lot of good times, man. And I really, that's one of my favorite things about doing the podcast is just all the fun stuff and getting to know all these guys on a different level than you would from just being a fan in the crowd, And
then isn't Carl Anderson from Cincinnati too?
Carl the Machine Gun Anderson is most certainly from Cincinnati. He started at NWF, was trained by Roger Ruffin. And not only that, I'm not, probably shouldn't say this, but every once in a while he's backstage at the shows. So, but it's a big secret. Don't tell anybody. So,
well, don't worry. We've gotten people in Cleveland, such as Dolph Ziggler, as an attendee to shows. I've seen him multiple times just hanging out in the back watching shows. And also a guy who's, it's no secret, he's backstage at certain shows. A wrestler by the name of Johnny Gargano, but he came from this area and everything. But a fun fact about Carl Anderson, he follows Wrestling Cheers on Twitter.
Very nice. Awesome.
I have no idea how that happened. I'm thinking it has to do whenever it was the Ohio Indie Report, and I don't know, he's seen a tweet and he followed, I don't know. I think I retweeted something, and then it was like, Carl Anderson retweeted this, and I'm like, what? And I looked at it, it says following you, and I'm like, oh shit. I have no idea what this happened. So it's one of those things I never want to mention him, because then he'll go, why am I following this account? Unfollow. And I'll be heartbroken, because I feel like it's one of the more high profile people that follow us. And I have no idea where it happened. I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Carl Anderson.
Well, we have a running joke that on the podcast that guy follows me on Twitter, because if you look at my followers on Twitter at Drusifer Tweets, you can see that every independent wrestler in the area follows me, as well as many, many, many other wrestlers, worldwide. And I don't really know how that happened, except for just years of work and kind of just working the social media stuff. But a lot of times we will see a guy we've never seen before. And I'll kind of think, man, he kind of looks familiar. I'm pretty sure he follows me on Twitter, and it's become a joke. But then I'll find out that sure enough, he does. He follows me on Twitter and has retweeted a bunch of my shit. And I'm like, man, hey. And then I try to reach out to him and be like, hey, nice to meet you. I didn't realize we were even friends. So, That's the magic of social media, right?
One person that I love from your area, well, just say people, is the Chrysts. I love Dave. Dave's the best. I love Jake too, but Dave is hands down the best. I haven't seen him in this area, and I think I've told you this story before. I didn't mention it on the podcast, but screw it. I like telling the story. I haven't seen him in years prior to WrestleMania weekend. He hasn't been booked in Cleveland since like the end of 2012. And I've seen him during the WrestleCon Super Show, and I just figure I'm going to walk right by him whenever. He's like, hey man, what's up? And I'm like, do you remember me? He's like, of course I do, man. And like, we started talking a little bit. And then I think I heard on your show how he says like he might forget names, but he'll never forget a face. And I remember when he was up here, for a while, I was trying for them to get in the OI 4K shirts. And that was right around the time that they changed the design. It was first the one that looked like the Misfits logo, and then they changed it to the one that was made by CZW. And I was like, the first show I think I went to, they had the original one, and they didn't have them again for a while. And I'd always ask him like, where's that? And then one day he's like I think maybe on Facebook or something, he's like, I'm getting it in. Like, we're going to have him at the next show. And I picked it up. And the fact that he remembered me is one of the craziest things to happen as a fan. And I think he's one of the top, 5 or 10, nicest guys in wrestling. Like, there might be people out there that can say some bad things about him, but I think it's few and far in between. Maybe it's business-wise. But as a person towards fans, he's great. I love him.
Yeah, he's never been anything but nice to us. We, of course, if you're familiar with our show, we had the very, very long interview with him. I think it was originally about 2.5 hours, but I had to cut a little bit out because he had some tryouts coming up that he wanted to cut a few things out that he had said. So, and Dave's one of these guys that doesn't really have a filter. No. So, as long as you're on his good side, man, he's a hell of a guy. And even if you're not on his good side, he's still going to be nice to you, in person. He's never once been rude to me. And I've had some awkward conversations with him. One time, the restroom at Rockstar Pro, there's a couple of them, but there's only one that men use basically. And I went in there one time and he was like, I don't know, he was having some kind of problem with his pants. He was trying to get his pants buttoned or something. And I came in and I was talking to him for a minute. And I think that was when we were trying to get, when he first injured his back. And he was bummed out all the time, man. And he was just walking around Rockstar, couldn't wrestle, couldn't do anything. And I was like, hey, man, you got a little time on your hands. Why don't you come on the show? And that's when I first started setting that up with him. And he was really nice and everything, but it was just kind of a awkward place to ask somebody for an interview, but it just worked out that way. And, like I said, he's been nothing but nice. But his brother Jake is a tremendous wrestler as well. Our guy, Aaron Williams, has had many, many, many battles with both of those guys. And, they're friends as well. And, as you know, the OI4K kind of thing is that's where it comes from, is Rockstar Pro. So, it's, if you hear Jake talk about it on the interview that we did, it was the idea that it was supposed to kind of be like the Road Home from Wrestling, where it would have chapters all over the country. And Ricky Shane Page was going to be the Cleveland chapter. And, there's all these various people that they wanted in the thing. Probably. A motorcycle club kind of, or whatever. But
probably Eric Ryan too. Eric Ryan.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Because I know for a longest time he had the OI4K patch on his tights.
Mm-hmm. We just saw him. He was at their last pay-per-view, which was called "I'ma Be a Gangster Forever," which is named after some song. And he was in a a 6-way juice match, basically, where they had Matt Tremont, a couple of his guys versus Eric Ryan and a couple of Rockstar Pro guys, and it was okay. You know what I mean? I've seen. In fact, speaking of Dave Chryst, my favorite Eric Ryan match I've ever seen was Dave Chryst and Eric Ryan in a casket match. Good Lord, dude. This was unreal, man. This was a tremendous match. And, it's kind of sucks now that Dave and Jake, they have success now. They're on television. I'm not saying it sucks that they have success, but it sucks because we don't get to see them wrestle at Rockstar anymore. So, the new wave of folks that have come in are, your guys like your Myron Reeds, your Trey Miguel, Desmond Xavier's gone now, and I'm trying to think of who else. There's so many other guys. Aaron's still there, and Clayton Jackson's a guy that's pretty awesome that's up there. And so all these guys are kind of taking over the mantle of what Dave and Jake have built up there. And it's kind of, Rockstar's in kind of a transition mode right now because of that, where the shows are kind of hit and miss, and, sometimes they're a little goofy and sometimes they're really great, but we'll be there to cover it either way. And, if we don't like that show, we'll like one of the other 3 shows that we go to that same week. So,
It sounds very similar to what we're going through in Cleveland, or what we've been going through, because, I became an independent wrestling fan in 2011, and Johnny Gargano's been on damn near every single show. He was injured at one point after his match with Ricochet at Evolve, and I know that put him out for so many months. And, sometimes he had bookings elsewhere and whatnot, but it was a thing that every show, or mostly every show, I would be able to go in, talk to Johnny Gargano. We talk Cleveland sports because that's something that we connected on, and we'd have fun. Now he's in NXT, in WWE. He's a guy who's probably going to be there a long time. And when we had that first show without him, it kind of sucked because there's that constant. Now he's gone, and I think also with the recent passing of one of the AIW owners, that's been another thing, but they're working on changing how they do things, and I thoroughly enjoy what they're doing. Like, even the card that we have announced for Hell on Earth is pretty awesome. I had it up. Like, I know that the main event, Tim Donst versus Nick Gage, how much have you seen of either of these guys?
Lots of Tim Donst, 0 Nick Gage.
You are going to be in for a treat, okay? Because, Donst his story in AIW is funny, too. 2 years ago, when he had cancer, and he actually had a feud with Gage, because they both have a gimmick or whatever, like, who's the fucking man? And, you just say Tim fucking Donst or Nick fucking Gage. And I guess Gage did it before Donst, and Donst was doing it, and then when Gage got out of jail for a brief period of time before going back in, they set up this nice feud between the two. And it's when Tim Donst was coming back from cancer. So he was this huge baby face. And he does end up beating Nick Gage. But after the match, Nick Gage lays him out. Tremendous heat on Gage. 2 years later, and within that time, Tim Donst has flipped because the crowd reaction has changed. They went from loving him to people like me who are kind of skeptic of him. Kind of like, okay, you're this, but I don't know, you're kind of boring. It's the same shit. We've called him Big Match Donst because he was getting all these higher profile matches, and it's okay, whatever. You kind of suck, dude. And then he flipped, and now you got he's supposed to be a bad guy. A lot of people are booing him, but he still does have this crowd, this section that loves him. So literally, the last time they were together in the ring was Absolution 10, and 2 years later at Absolution 12. Right after Tim Donst wins his match and retains his title, Nick Gage's music hits. And for the first time in 2 years, he returns to AIW. And it's crazy, because now a lot of people like me, we absolutely love Nick Gage. And Nick Gage is a deathmatch guy. And I'm really looking forward to this match, and both times that he's come out at AIW at the end of the night, I've flipped my shit, because I love stories that are drawn out through a long period of time. If you've ever watched, or if you ever get a chance to watch PWO Prime Wrestling, they had a couple year story arc between one of my favorite wrestlers, Marion Fontaine, and internet wrestling columnist Justin LaBar. They kept, every time you would think it was over, they would add a new wrinkle, and they'd keep going, and then add a new wrinkle, and having really cool heel turns and surprise guest, and it's hard to explain, but they always kept me interested. And I think they started that in 2011. The company folded in the fall of 2013, and that storyline was still technically going, in a different chapter, but still going. And I love storytelling like that.
Hey, me too, man. We go to so many different promotions. The further north that we go, it seems the less story is important. And the further south that we go, the more that work rate is less important. And, one of the greatest matches I've ever seen is a boxing match between two guys who aren't wrestlers that was at Primetime Wrestling, between a manager and the owner of the company. And it was amazing because it didn't, because of all the story that went behind it. And we didn't even see half of the story, but I was able to kind of pick up on everything, because we just started going to there like 3 or 4 months ago. And there's been this years long story going into this. And, that stuff to me is when being a fan pays off, paying attention pays off. I really am a fan of like flippy do, super matches, you're like we saw, at that Catalina Wrestling Mixer, we saw, Ray Phoenix versus, Shane Strickland or something like that. I mean, it's great, but it has zero story. And so because of that, it's hard for me to be invested as a fan beyond the, wow, that's cool. And as we all know, if you love a character in a movie and that character dies, or if you love a storyline that ends satisfyingly or doesn't, it can affect you emotionally. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that sometimes independent pro wrestling or just pro wrestling in general can miss, is that they are there to manipulate our emotions and make us feel something, much like music does. And I liken music to pro wrestling quite a bit, and I think that that's one of the things that sometimes we get to miss out on, sometimes where, we're too focused on putting 3,000 moves into a match and we forget about the story. And I think the more that we see the Southern wrestling as we call it, down in Georgetown, and some of the NWF stuff that's, very Memphis style and whatnot, is that we tend to like that a little more, I think, sometimes, because it, like you said, it has this kind of, this build and something, the matches go somewhere, and it's not just like, oh, wow, they did the double moonsault, or something like that. And that stuff's great. But I think that if you blend those two together, that's when wrestling becomes perfect to me.
I think one thing about AIW too is actually they've lately, I can't say lately, it's gone on for a while, but they are putting more of an emphasis on it right now. Is they are doing more emphasis on storylines, but they try to give you the best of both worlds. Because I think what you're trying to say, like about like matches that have no meaning, I've often heard it or recently heard it described as PWG booking, where it's we're gonna have this name versus this name, ooh ah, we're gonna have this name versus this name, ooh ah, and I mean those matches could be and events could be fun to go to, but I mean they're only gonna help you out so much. And like, even what sucks is actually because I'm looking at this card and there's not as many stories going into it. But a lot of it's because Absolution wasn't that long ago, and right around Hell on Earth and over the next couple months and going into the March show of Gauntlet for the Gold, like this is when they're going to be building and planting seeds for some of those stories. Like one of the main ones we have is Tim Donst versus Nick Gage. Other than that, I've not really too many stories going into it. I mean, they've built like kind of promos in a way, like Ethan Page, had a kind of a promo talking about like why he was in this match versus Dominic Greeny. Filthy Tom Lawler hasn't really done much, but I think his story is kind of going through people and having competition put in front of him, maybe leading to a championship down the road. A match that hasn't been announced yet, or participants that haven't been announced for this show, where we're going to see them, I don't know. But the production, which is Frankie Flynn, Derek Director, Colby Red, and Magnum CK, the new member, Magnum CK. And that's been going on since a little bit before Absolution, like the build of this team for Frankie Flynn. And I'm expecting something. I'm expecting maybe some match to be announced. Maybe PB Smooth versus Magnum CK. I don't know. But that's some storylines we've had. But I know, like, going into Absolution, there was a lot going on. And it made a lot of the matches very, very interesting.
It's always good. We attend this promotion, like I said, Northern Wrestling Federation, which is NWF, and they run a big show once a month. And like their next big show, they're going to have Abyss on the show because he was trained there, and a bunch of other folks. But typically they kind of use their students, and that's it. And but some of their students are guys like, Carl Anderson and people of that caliber that maybe didn't quite make it in the WWE WWE or whatever. So, like Wildcat Chris Harris is there every week, and, we get to see some good stuff. But when we first went there, we were kind of blown away by the fact that we didn't get a lot of finality in the matches. Like, there were no good finishes, like as far as, someone got pinned in the middle of the ring. There was a lot of shenanigans. There was every match got DQ'd, and there was all this stuff. And at first we were like, what the fuck is this? This is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
We didn't realize what they were doing. And over time, we started to call this the NWF finish, because this is the finish that leads to the next match. As Triple H says, the book that never closes, and stories have to end, but they also have to continue. And so sometimes, like for example, at Rockstar Pro, as an example, a different side of the coin, they always have definitive endings. I mean, like, no match ends in a DQ, like, ever. I mean, it is very rare. Like it'll happen once every 6 months that there'll be like a DQ there, and which is kind of limiting yourself a little bit storytelling wise. But at the same time, that's not what they're focused on. They're doing the PWG booking, like you're talking about. Their next big show, they've announced the people that are coming. We don't know where they're going to be or who they're going to fight, but we know they'll be there. Like David Starr will be there. Some of our favorites, the Gym Nasty Boys, will be there, which is White Mike and Timmy Lee Retton. But we don't know who they're going to be in a match with, and there'll be no story or no build to that. It'll just be like, oh, well, David Starr is going to face Aaron Williams, and that's the match. So that's unfortunate, because if we had story, those matches would mean so much more. And when they do actually do story, it's pretty incredible thing to combine those two things. So one of the biggest things that, biggest shows of the summer that we attended was the Ted Petty Invitational at IWA Mid-South. And the story of that was win the tournament. You know what I mean? That was the story.
Oh, yeah.
And there was and that's a great, easy thing to build off of. But there were some stories going on in the tournament between particular competitors and stuff like that. But I mean, that was one of the most tremendous 2-day things of wrestling I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we lost our minds, Sue Young threw Homicide into my chair. And if you listen to our show, my chair is very infamous, because we always bring our own chairs to all the shows. And there's these kind of like real comfortable kind of lawn chair deals. And everyone's always jealous. And she saw me earlier that day with a chair and was like, huh. And then threw Homicide in my chair, and everyone was freaking out. I mean, like, stuff like that happening is always amazing. But I mean, just the story itself of the win the tournament. My point being is that, that allowed for all kinds of incredible things and reasons for why these guys were laying it on the line so much, and why they were going to the lengths they were doing and committing these, atrocities against their opponent to win, because they would do anything to win. So, simple thing like that can add so much to matches. And that's why when it's lacking, it's a little frustrating, because, as everybody says, it's pro wrestling. You can do anything. You can have a monkey from fucking space. You know what I mean? So you can do whatever you want. And as long as you, do something, I'm happy with it.
I mean, that's the other side of that coin of like what AIW does. Like, just kind of like using this card as example, Colt Cabana versus Jimmy Jacobs. I mean, that's a name versus name match, but Colt Cabana, I don't think he's ever had a bad match in my opinion. He's managed to, because I'm a huge fan of comedy wrestling, so he will get me interested in his match, and I think that has to be the mindset. Like, if you don't have a storyline going on, create your own within the match. Like, make people interested. I mean, granted, I've seen matches where I don't have as much interest going into it, but the story they tell, the moves they do, they suck me in, and I thoroughly enjoy the match. Trying to looking at the cards, if there's anybody else that's just like, oh well, Jody Fleisch versus M-Dog Matt Cross versus Laredo Kid versus DJZ. Looking at that, like, all right, that's going to be a flippy shit match. People are going to be going everywhere. That's what this match is for. But I'm fine with that. We have the match that was just announced today as of this recording, which is going to be a absolutely giant 10-man tag match. Marino Tadnaglio with the Weird World and Space Monkey and Dick Justice versus Trey Lamar, Garrison King, AJ Gray, Joshua Bishop, and Malcolm Monroe III. That's another crazy match. As of right now, this is kind of my prediction to start off the show. If it's a match that's already been announced, because this is going to be a very interesting match. But then again, a lot of these AIW students haven't been given the first match. They get put on later on, especially Joshua Bishop, friend of the show. His family shows up to these shows and is the most dedicated family I have ever seen of a wrestler. Like, they have shown up to many matches and events in droves, and it's weird, like some of the placings they get, and this family goes nuts.
The Bishop Brigade, right? Or Brigade, right?
Yeah, the Bishop Brigade.
Yeah. Well, as you're describing this card to me, a quote comes up in my mind that we often reference on our show because it's so profound, and that is that, wrestling should be like the circus. You should have the elephants, and then you should have, the trapeze artists, and then you should have the freaks, and then you should have, the strongman. And it sounds to me like AIW is putting together a card that has all those things. I'm assuming that the Colt Cabana match will be sort of a comedy match, and, that's going to be tremendous. You mentioned Dick Justice. Speaking of amazing comedy wrestlers, we saw him have a trilogy with our own John Murray here at Rockstar Pro.
That'd be amazing.
It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I mean, there was a card once where the main event was Sami Callihan versus I think Jay Christ versus Ethan Page. No, it was David Starr, Sami Callihan, Ethan Page. I was much more interested in, I wanted to see that or whatever, but I was much more excited about the Dick Justice, John Murray match because it was better than the main event. And they didn't do any flippy doos. In fact, they did very little wrestling, but it was amazing. So that kind of stuff, like I said, if you can build a card with all those different things on them, that's the art of booking right there. That's good stuff.
Who did Ethan Page go up against in the opening round of the Catalina Wrestling Mixer?
Simon Gotch.
That's right. Ethan Page isn't huge on comedy wrestling. You don't see him a lot doing that kind of stuff, but the opening to that match and what they did, granted referencing Step Brothers the way they did, was hilarious. And that's one of like those few gems that you find like, all right, I wasn't expecting that, but that was pretty good.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because every time Ethan Page has come to Rockstar, he's kind of done comedy. Like that's kind of been his thing there is like whenever he comes, he does comedy and he does some wrestling and mostly it's him talking shit and being funny. And so, and not in a heel way, being like genuinely entertaining as a good guy. Yeah, man, that was a fun match. I've seen Simon Gotch from way back. I went to some of the first NXT shows when they left Florida. They came to Columbus, Ohio, and I went to all those. And so, I got to see matches, I got to see Bayley versus, Sasha in a bar in Columbus years ago, you know what I mean, which was tremendous. But I got to see one of the matches that was awesome, speaking of great comedy wrestling, is that we had Enzo and Cass versus the Vaudevillains. And they did a boxing match, basically, where they actually brought out stools and put them in the corner and, and had spit buckets and stuff like that. It was pretty funny. Turns out, it's just because a bunch, half the people in that match couldn't wrestle. So, but they did their best, So what was your favorite match that night, though? The Catalina Wrestling Mixer?
It might have been that match. No. The, what was the big scramble match?
Yes.
That was huge. What title was on the line? Because I'm not as familiar with, Pro Wrestling Revolver or whatever.
It's the Pro Wrestling Revolver. It's their only title, which is the Scramble match title.
Scramble match title. Okay. Mm-hmm. That was a fun match. And all the aspects that they didn't. Not to mention Space Monkey was in it, so I was happy to. Yes. Oh, I was happy to see Space Monkey.
Now at the end of that match who ended up with the title, right? Do you know?
No, I can't remember. I remember it was a new champion. Oh.
It was me.
Well,
I was the one who ended up with the title at the end of that match because they had a heel guy named Palmer who came out.
Yeah, Palmer.
He attacked Sami Callihan, and Sami Callihan looked like he was going to win, but it turned out no. Palmer won, and as he was being chased off by the baby faces right through the crowd, running over old ladies as he went, he dropped the title on the ground at my feet, and I picked it up, held it high, and gave it to security guard. So,
well, if that was a fanny pack, you would have been a champion.
Yeah, no shit. I am not happy with that angle. But anyway, so not a fan of that angle. But we'll see where that's going to go. There's all kinds of crazy shit going on with that. But anyway, well, tell me. So AIW, what am I going to be looking forward to the most? I mean, what are the things that that you think are unique to that promotion that I'm going to be kind of blown away by when I come up there?
I always want to say the fans, because we're a rabid bunch. I mean, I've heard good things about us and I've heard bad things about us. Like, I've heard people say AIW has the worst fans, but then, a lot of people who, you hear on the show, like, we try to be a good bunch, but maybe, there are times that we come off as assholes. I know it's a to each their own thing, because I actually had a friend of mine try to tell me at one point that, Rockstar fans were garbage, and I go to the show and I'm just like, I don't know what experience you had, but I'm like, I had a pretty fun night. I mean, it's definitely to each their own thing. I mean, I don't know the shows that you go to, but I mean, kind of like, I know AIW, they run a little long depending on the show. I mean, there has been shows that we get out after midnight, which granted, I think the one that I went to down there, the fucking Catalina Wine wrestling mixer, I think was longer, but then again, it was a much later start time, and I think Sammy was like apologizing for it. I think it was like an hour and a half maybe behind, 2 hours behind. It seemed like it was long because they were piling people in.
Yeah, they started an hour late, I think. But that the entrance to that place makes it difficult because you can't open two lines up or anything like that. There just has to be the one line. And I was talking to Isaac, who is the ticket guy there, hell of a guy. He mentioned that he is dreading the February Wrestling Revolver show because of the fact that they give him the list like 5 minutes before they open the doors. So he's trying to like find people on a list and take money and all this kind of stuff, and it's a huge pain in the ass for him. And he can do his best, and that's all he can do. So but that's going to be something else, man. You got to come down for that one. I don't know if there's any tickets left though.
I want to. I really want to go, but some of us are kind of questioning where else is Naito going to be, because we know AAW right now, and we know
Glory Pro.
Or is it Glory Pro?
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be in AAW too, or I could be wrong.
Both, yeah. Those three.
Yeah. Okay. We're wondering if there's going to be more, because I think the week after that show, Pro Wrestling Revolver, is an AIW show. Elgin, has wrestled in AIW, has a good relationship, far as I understand, with AIW, and they've tried to book him a couple times since, he's been signed with New Japan, and they've had some fall through and one not fall through that I couldn't remember. I want to say it's only been one where he's been here, and he's actually when he was the IWGP Intercontinental Champion.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and I was like, I have to get a picture with the title. I'm like, I'll never get to do that again. And like now with the update about like I'm actually behind on New Japan, just too much shit in my life. But like seeing the updated title, I was like, ugh, kind of like the dingy, dirty one, like the all white one. Like I know it's how it's supposed to look, but it just doesn't look right.
We had a cool experience. This is a little bit off topic, but at the Ted Petty Invitational, Aaron Williams went into it as the champion, and he decided to defend the title each time. And then, he wrestled, and he also won it. And at the end of it, Shane Mercer, who's a tremendous wrestler, came out and destroyed him with a turnbuckle, and he was bleeding all over the place. And he still ended up defending the title again for somebody cashed in on him, and he defeated them. It was ridiculous. And he had blood all over the title, right? So the next, I think that was Thursday and Friday. That Sunday night, I had him over for dinner. So because we didn't really get a chance to talk to him much that weekend because he was a little bit busy and wrestling and beating guys up and defending that title. But he came over and he brought it with him. and this thing is all dirty. It's got his blood all over it and stuff. and I was like, man, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was just amazing, you know. And Michael Elgin very recently held that title. In fact, he vacated it, and Aaron won it in a tournament. And he was supposed to probably lose it to Aaron at one of those shows that we went to, but he didn't show up because he was stuck in Japan. So maybe one of those AIW shows, too, that he missed out on was around that same time. So
no, it was way before. Like, they booked him for Gauntlet for the Gold one year, and he was like, when they announced the event, they announced him with it, but it was literally... like when they announced it, it was like maybe a week or two before he officially signed with New Japan. And then New Japan was like, well, we need you for these dates. Those dates were like a couple AIW bookings. One of them, the one that they had already announced, and they're like, yeah, he's not going to be here. But I mean, it was been since then that he's obviously shown up, had the IWGP Intercontinental Championship, which was, like I said, that was just awesome.
Well, think about this. If, Naito is facing Kazuchika Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 12, real soon, and then a couple weeks later, he'll be in Dayton. So there's a chance that the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion might be in Dayton, Ohio at my local federation, which is just fucking nuts to me. And we've often said we will never get the chance to see that guy in America. And, the fact that he's coming to my backyard is just one of the most mind-boggling things in the world to me. And he's going to face Michael Elgin in the main event that night. We got a bunch of other great people coming, too. One guy I did want to talk about real quick, if you don't mind, change the subject. Have you ever seen Shane Strickland live, except for that one time that you saw him down in Dayton?
I want to say WrestleMania weekend. I think he was at one of the shows, either at the WrestleCon Super Show or is he in Evolve?
But he may have been. I'm not sure.
Like there was so much wrestling that weekend, and companies I'm not necessarily familiar with, that I just went for some of the experience. And I'm just like, I don't remember everybody that wrestled, especially the WrestleCon Super Show. Like, that was a crazy night.
I can imagine. Well, that's a guy that he'll be at this next Wrestling Revolver show, and he is one of my favorite guys to watch live. I'm so spoiled. I get to see so many great wrestlers, but he's a guy that I just wanted to put over because, man, like, he does so many simple things well. Like, and I don't mean well, I mean like better than anyone I've ever seen kind of thing. That it's just like he makes just a simple punch or a simple kick like one of the greatest things you ever see in your life. And that's a lot of guys that I see, but man, for some reason when he jumps, he floats. When he kicks, he moves his whole body to kind of emphasize the kick. And those cracks when he kicks somebody are so well timed and so loud. I've never seen anybody do that better. He's a tremendous, tremendous wrestler, and wouldn't be surprised to see if he's out of his Lucha Underground deal to get snatched up by somebody, because man, he is something else. And he is a guy that I used to see at Rockstar Pro every week. He'd be there every week, and I just been so spoiled. You know what I mean? That's like, I get to see so much great wrestling. It's awesome.
It's almost like even with Impact right now, TNA, GFW, whatever you want to call it, some of the people they're bringing in, it's cool to see them succeed. Like, granted, Ethan Carter III, a.k.a. Derek Bateman, a.k.a. Michael Hutter. That's a guy, like, he was around AIW before I was. So see him doing well is awesome. Seeing Dick Justice being used. Hearing of, which I know it hasn't been announced yet, but the spoilers are everywhere, Ethan Page. And the name that he uses
is pretty cool, huh?
The name that he uses as a homage to Chandler Biggins is like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I love it. And I was like reading stuff on Facebook or Twitter, and people just like, oh my God, it's a dumb name. And I'm like, I don't know. I know where it comes from, so I think it's pretty freaking cool. And it's just a damn name. Like, shut up. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, there was a time when people would bitch about WWE and they'd call it the slave name. But I'm
like, my God.
Yeah, I've literally heard people call it, like, when they change your name, they call it your slave name. It's been a while since I've heard someone say that. But that, if you're good enough, your name change won't matter. Like, I remember when they announced, okay, Jon Moxley is going to be known as Dean Ambrose. People are like, Dean, that just name is dumb. And I'm like, well, look at him now. no one goes, oh, Dean Ambrose, that's a dumb name. No, they go, oh, that's Dean Ambrose. Like, and I mean, granted, you get the ones that, I mean, like, I think my absolute favorite was Kevin Owens. As soon as they announced that, you know, he's going from Kevin Steen to Kevin Owens, I'm like, he wants to help honor Owen Hart, and especially with his son being named Owen. Like, that is awesome. And the joke that I've always used is how much of a heel he really is, because that would mean his son's name is Owen Owens.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, and that's a guy you're familiar with, I would assume.
Oh
Did you see him up at AIW quite a bit before he left for the big show?
I missed his last show with us, and then I think the show before that he missed, that he was supposed to be at. That was when his daughter was born, and then I think I seen him 2 times before that, and he was a guy, like, I didn't really watch Ring of Honor until recently, because of just, we don't get it in this area. Like, on TV, we don't get it. Like, there's no Sinclair company right now. Actually, recently they bought one, but I don't think they're fully taking over yet. But I'd have to go online and watch them, and now it's much easier with the, you know, the Fight app. But I knew of Kevin Steen, but I didn't know that much about him. When they announced him that he was actually, it was a Hell on Earth that he debuted at. And I was like, all right, I'm going to check this guy out. And I stopped by his merch table, and me and him, like, got into an instant conversation. And I was like, all right, I'm definitely buying an 8x10 and I'll get a picture, because I'm like, you're pretty awesome. So he's another guy that is, what he has done for this, for AIW, he has shouted AIW out a bunch, like in interviews and whatnot. And when Chandler Biggins passed away, he, said stuff online. I think he had a CB thing somewhere written on him that night. I love that. Like, he easily became one of my favorite wrestlers over the past, 3 or 4 years.
Well, I got to see him once in the Independents, and it was his second to last match in Ring of Honor. He came to the this is one of the first pro wrestling events I ever went to live, too. I'd been watching for years, but I hadn't really gone to anything. And I went to this Ring of Honor show in the Masonic Temple, which is like a high school theater, basically. I mean, the opening match was Rocky Romero and Tommaso Ciampa versus Red Dragon, and these main event, I guess the semi-main or whatever was Kevin Owens versus Silas Young in a hardcore match, and it was his second to last match in Ring of Honor. The next night they went up to Dearborn, and that was his last match. But it was pretty awesome to see him, and I missed all the Generico stuff. I've gone back and watched a lot of that as well. But man, Ring of Honor, their live shows are just awesome. I love going to see their live shows. The only problem that I have with them now is they've kind of grown to the point where they go to these larger places that I don't want to go. Like now they go to Columbus and they have this place. It's the same place I saw NXT, but that was years ago when they had a different setup and it was a smaller bar kind of. And now this place is more of a concert venue. And Ring of Honor, you know how they say you want an ass every 18 inches? Well, Ring of Honor wants an ass every 12 and a half inches. And it is just, it's brutal, man. It's just, you're too close to everybody. And I don't know, man. I don't get social anxiety, but I do get you're sitting on my lap anxiety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that kind of sucks about it. But last time we saw him at that venue in Columbus, and David Starr was on that card, Jonathan Gresham was on that card, and I just always think that they at least will have one amazing match on each show. And that night we saw Young Bucks versus the War Machine. It was fucking awesome. And Ray Rose, a guy that we've seen at Rockstar Pro quite a bit too.
Cleveland guy.
Is he? Yeah, no kidding, huh? He dates Crazy Mary Dobson too, and she's from our area as well. We've seen her quite a bit at Rockstar Pro. In fact, we've been lucky to see a lot of independent wrestlers final matches, right before they went to the big time. Tommy End came for 2 shows at Rockstar Pro right before he joined NXT. Heidi Lovelace did the same thing. Raymond Rowe before he went to New Japan. Crazy Mary Dobson, and we get to see a lot of those folks right before they go on, which is awesome. And that's one of those rewarding things like you're talking about, where you as a fan, you have this, like we were talking about before, whether it's a story or it's a personal investment that you have in this person's character or their well-being as a human being. That's kind of what gets them over to you, and so if you're able to kind of have these kind of, I don't know, personal investments with these characters or with these folks when they succeed on the big time, or, some bad heel comes and beats their ass on NXT television or something, your heart goes out to them and you're like, oh, I want them to win, and after speaking with Les Thatcher a lot, he's just like every wrestler, he claims that he invented everything, but he does claim that he is the first person to do character pieces on wrestlers, as far as like learning what they actually, like doing sit down interviews with them, doing sit down interviews with them and stuff like that. That's something that he always talks about, how that's very important to have this personal connection with he tells a story about, he used to have a race car driver gimmick. And so this kid came up to him after the show and with his mom and said, oh, can I have your autograph, Mr. Thatcher? He's like, sure. Came up to him after the show and with his mom and said, oh, can I have your autograph, Mr. Thatcher? He's like, sure. And she said, yeah, he doesn't even really like wrestling, but he heard you say something about being a race car driver, And so he said that just set a light bulb off in his head that, hey, there's something to this, and that's where I need to make my money, is something like that, which, I don't know. Sorry, long diatribe about, stuff, man.
Well, I was thinking, we've had some close to last matches, some of which, you had named, we had Tommy N, I think right around the same time he was at Rockstar. I don't remember if it was before or after. I know we had one of the last matches from Crazy Mary Dobson. We had one of the last matches with Heidi Lovelace when she dropped the title to Shayna Baszler, who has yet to lose the AIW Women's Championship, and we don't know what's going on with that as of right now either. So she could very well, she could very well show up at a show and drop the title to somebody, or, she could have to, quote, mail the championship back and not, which actually I think she does carry the belt with her, but she could just walk away undefeated. Not undefeated in AEW. She did lose her first match to Mia Yim, but since being champion, walk away undefeated. So that'd be really interesting. I think the only big one that we definitely had the last match was obviously Johnny Gargano. I mean, we named the show after him, and he walked away after his match with a 45-minute speech, and very, very emotional night. One night I'll never forget in my career as being a independent wrestling fan.
That's awesome. Well, man, what's the future for Wrestling Cheers? What are you trying to accomplish with this thing, and how can I help?
Right now it's a step-by-step thing. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, and I can mention right now, maybe it was a perfect plug for me, but we're still waiting on official confirmation from Spotify, and I don't know what's going on with that. I'm going to quickly...
Hey, me too, brother. Me too.
Well, Podbean now is partnered with Spotify, and they sent me an email when it was official saying, hey, we can help get you on. Just go to do this and this and this on your account page and hit the connect to Spotify button, and we'll do the work. And last time I checked, which was about a week ago, it said under review. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the biggest things, and I officially got everything back just last night, and that is we will have a What a Maneuver store up on Monday. And I know a lot of people are asking me where, I want to get this and the shirt, blah, blah, blah. I will not have any in my personal possession for a while. But what I'm going to do, eventually I'll order some, but I want people to order them now. And it's not just t-shirts. What a Maneuver offers, you can get t-shirt, you can get a hoodie, you can get an infant onesie, you can get women's shirts, you can get them in child size. Mm-hmm. And that I think is really, really big because I've always wanted to go to a show and represent myself. And when they go on sale, I'm at least ordering a shirt. It does sound like it takes almost about the same amount of time to get a shirt as it does for pro wrestling tees. Maybe a little less. I'm not 100% sure, but it's going to be pretty cool. And then eventually I'm going to release some more designs. I know there's a Fight Caden Fight shirt that I produced last year, and I think we're going to redo it. I mentioned on last week's episode, but it is official. It does go live on Monday. They're going to promote it. I'm going to promote it. And, you know, I definitely like to see some t-shirts get sold. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. I think the next step for me, because I'm just a step-by-step kind of guy. If I continue doing one episode per week till the end of the year, I will equal what I've done on Ohio Indie Report or exceed it by one episode. And that's amazing because that's only been this year. And I was the first part of the year, I wasn't doing it every week. And then eventually I said, you know what, let's do the show every week. And the show started in 2012 and went all the way up to last year. So 4 years of a show. And I'm going to come either equal what I did in those years in 1 year, or I'm going to surpass it by one episode. And I think that's big.
That is big, man. You know, it's all about personal goals and whatever you feel like doing. That, you know, if you feel like you're succeeding, that's what you're doing. And, you know, I know that you are a very well-respected individual in the podcast and the wrestling community. And I think that's kind of where your listener base can always come from, is the fact that, you know, you're well respected and, you know, you have solid opinions that are well thought out, and you're also a pretty damn nice guy too, which really helps. So, you know, I think that, you know, obviously we wish you the best success in the world, you know, from our end and everything, because we're all in this together. We're not competing. You know, that's the cool thing about podcasts, is that there's no competition. It's just, you know, hey, you know, we want to partner with you and, you know, and promote you guys as much as you promote us. You know, that's the whole point. So,
as of right now, I just double checked the Podbean page, and it says connected to Spotify.
Holy shit! Breaking news on the podcast.
But I don't know what that means, because trust me, like for the past week, because last week I kind of had this like just I accomplished two things. I said, you know, screw it. I'm going to apply for What a Maneuver. I'm going to send them a message to their, oh yeah, actually, your podcast is now on Spotify. Breaking news.
Wow.
As we're listening, they sent me an email within this past hour at 10:18. So while we were recording, dear podcaster, we are glad to inform you your podcast is now active in Spotify. You may use, and they give me a link for users to get your podcast on Spotify. There it is.
That is awesome, man.
That is breaking news.
Congratulations.
But yeah, I had that with What a Maneuver, and then a couple of days before that, as soon as I seen the message, like, hey, we're partnered with Spotify now, so we can get you on Spotify. I'm like, oh, I'm getting on the computer. Like, let's do this. I want to get on Spotify. So yeah, now this will be the first official episode that you'll be able to get on Spotify. That's kind of cool. Like, it's some great news.
That's what all those damn kids use. They don't know nothing about iTunes. So, you know, that's every kid I've ever known that's, you know, under the age of like 20. They're like, oh, yeah, I use Spotify for everything. I don't know what iTunes is. I don't know that I have a podcast app on my phone. You believe this shit?
Well, on a side note, which we know people who are like this, and this is what I don't understand. When I talk to people, especially in one of the Facebook groups we're in, and they're like, well, here's my podcast, and it's just on YouTube, and I'm like, that's
not a podcast.
Like, yeah, no, you have a YouTube show with audio only. Like, I don't tell this to them. I'm nice in that group. But it's just like, no, like, you get this. And there is a particular quote podcast that we know of, and I don't mean to talk crap about them, but it's just like, hey, I really want to listen to your show. You're Ohio based. I like what you're doing. What I see that you're doing. But when I listen to my shows, I like being able to get them through iTunes. And I understand not everybody uses iTunes. That's why this show is available on all the platforms that I have mentioned: iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn. And I know that there's a Podbean app that you can get, and you can listen to it through it that way. But regardless, now Spotify. But if I can't get you on these platforms, then I don't consider you a real podcast, and I want you to. And then there's like other people that I know. There's another podcast that I know that was around here. Some friends of mine did through a website that they had, and I'd be like, great, what's your RSS feed? And they never had the answer. I'm just like, that's what you need. That's a basic.
Shit, man.
Like, I mean, granted, I was spoiled. When I first started doing podcasting, I was on Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio, they do everything for you. Like, all you have to do is say like you want to be on iTunes, and they do everything for you. And then I learned how to do stuff. On a side note, I am trying to create a Wrestling Cheers YouTube channel, but I haven't really done much about that yet.
Well, we do have a Road Home from Wrestling YouTube channel. It is highly unsuccessful. I think we have like 2 subscribers, Daniel Winchester and like a friend of mine, and that's it. So, but it is what it is, man. I can't agree with you more when I see these YouTube channels that are supposedly a podcast. And it's like, I do this thing on Monday nights where during Raw, I do a Facebook Live, right?
Yeah.
And I don't correct people, but you don't know how many people that appear on that say, "Oh, it's so great to be on your podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is a separate thing, but okay, yeah, sure, you're on my podcast." You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to say, But that's what it's a little frustrating, but at the same time, I'm just happy everyone's involved. And if you guys you want to follow me on Facebook, it's Drusifer Jones. Check out that Monday night if you want to hear from a lot of the folks that we're talking about. Because a lot of times they join me and discuss various things. This week we talked about pooping on the floor and peeing in sinks with Aiden Blackheart and Amazing Maria. So that was a tremendous night. And normally bodily functions don't come up very often. We titled that episode "Too Much Information." So normally it's just kind of pro wrestling talk and me recapping the weekend that we had, but that's always a good time. But it's not a podcast, and I don't call it that. Yeah. But people associate me with the Road Home from Wrestling, and so they just say, and honestly, the reason I do it is to promote the show. That's why I do it, every Monday. So, by the way, you mentioned the T-shirt thing. Now, we did recently get T-shirts, and we bought like 30 of them, right? And we gave a big chunk of them away to folks just as a thank you for all the help that they've given us and everything. And there is nothing like when one of your favorite wrestlers, his music comes on and he's coming to the ring and he's wearing your T-shirt. That is one of the coolest things in the world. And I can't wait for that to happen for you, man, because that absolutely will happen for you as soon as you have T-shirts.
Hold on a second. Mm-hmm. I'm looking through my closet right next to me and I don't see mine.
Well, I will be seeing you very soon. We are making another order. What size are you, actually send me your size so I can put you on the list. Okay. And we'll be doing another order soon. And if I don't get it to you by Hell on Earth, then I will in fact mail it up to you. That's no problem.
Okay. Abby? And then I'll work out something with you with the Wrestling Cheer shirt. Eventually I will do my own order. I have so many plans of what I want to do. Like I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned on the show. One thing I want to do for promotional, because I know a lot of people do stickers and buttons, which what Maneuver does, like they'll do privately through me, like you can go on and order it. But I'm going to look into sometime next year, and this makes so much sense. We are Wrestling Cheers. I want to
beer mugs, right?
No, promotional beer koozies.
Ooh, yeah, now you're talking. There you go.
They're cheap. I'm not going to sell them. It's here. Boom. Mm-hmm. I forget where I got that idea from. And I'm just like, that makes, because I think someone said like, oh, you need to get buttons. And I'm like, And then just something clicked. I'm like, why not beer koozies? That'd be awesome.
I'm sorry, but who the fuck wears buttons? I don't know anyone that wears buttons.
I know people that do. I have pins. I have 2 on my work lanyard.
Really? Okay.
One Bullet Club and the other one Villain Club. Before that, I had a couple other ones, but like, actually no, and I also have a button. I do have a button on there. It is a Veda Scott button, and I love Veda Scott.
Well, but to be fair, you had to have the Bullet and the Villain Club pinned somewhere just to complete your collection, though, right?
I mean, not really to complete the collection, because I actually have. No. I have spare. I have spares of all of them. I should say I have spares of those 2, and I have the other pins, and I have all the patches, and I think all the stickers. No, I have all the stickers. I'm missing the Bullet Club patch.
Well, I've heard you talk about all the different Bullet Club shit that you have, and it reminds me of that that part in Wayne's World where they're talking about commercialization and how shitty it is, and there's like people like selling out. Not saying you're selling out, but and then all of a sudden Garth is wearing like a Pepsi hat, Pepsi t-shirt, Pepsi everything, drinking a Pepsi, or or that Sarah Silverman program where they have the tab war and they start wrapping their car in tab stuff. You know, it just kind of reminds me of that. Imagine you hanging out, tying your shoestrings at a Bullet Club, adjusting your Bullet Club lanyard around your neck, while you're wearing your jacket and your hat's on your head.
Oh no, I'm a sellout about. This is serious. Let me see. Pre-2016, I was anti-Bullet Club. I was anti-New Japan. I was anti-Young Bucks. The Young Bucks came to Cleveland for a couple shows. One of them being Absolution 10 in an absolutely amazing match. Like a 12-man tag or 10-man tag, can't remember. But I got a picture with them just because I could. I know friends who were huge Young Bucks fans, huge Bullet Club fans, and I got a picture with them, and I even just said, yeah, just because I could. Like, they're too sweeting, and I'm not. So that's when you know I'm not into it at all. And then beginning of 2016 happened, and I was like starting new in a couple things in my life. I just moved, and I started a new job a couple months before that, and I was like, you know what? I got DirecTV now. They have Access TV. I didn't get TNA at the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch New Japan on Access. And a couple episodes in where I actually got to see the Bullet Club. And actually, I did get to see the amazing performance between Carl Anderson and Maria Kanellis-Bennett.
Good stuff, right?
That whole bit that oh my God, that's what I was like, oh my God, I love these guys. And then I got to see more of the Young Bucks, and I was like, you know what? I get it. And then after about a month of watching it, I ordered a Bullet Club shirt from Pro Wrestling Tees. And a lot of people who knew me and knew how much I didn't like the Bullet Club, I didn't like the Young Bucks, I didn't like any of that. All of a sudden, now I have a shirt. And then so long later, I bought more shirts. I bought a hat. I bought a bandana. I bought a jacket. And like, I get made fun of for it through certain friends of mine. And I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I just changed my mind on them. I didn't like them. I didn't see the appeal in them, but I was kind of being an asshole. I was like, they're overhyped. They're this, they're that. And I'm like, you know what? Now, especially with the year that they've had, like, and this is the thing which I don't know if I've explained on many shows about, and this is one thing I do love about the Bullet Club. And I love about this culture. When I wear my Bullet Club stuff, if someone recognizes it, I think that's cool because you don't get that with anything else. If I was wearing a Johnny Gargano shirt, I've never got anybody say, oh my God, Johnny Gargano, that's awesome. Or a Kevin Owens shirt, a Kevin Steen shirt, nothing like that. But I wear a Bullet Club and people walk up to me, they're too sweet me, or like, oh my God, awesome shirt. We just went out to a Japanese restaurant a couple weeks ago, ironically enough, and actually I always wear my Bullet Club stuff at the Japanese restaurant just for that reason. A guy is
you're fishing for a free meal.
No, a guy is leaving and he just looks at me and he throws up the too sweet. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, you don't get that with anything else. And that's what I love about it. And you don't, like I said, you don't get that with anything else. It's amazing.
Well, it's like a sports team,
Kinda, yeah.
If you see somebody wearing a Cowboys jersey and you're a Cowboys fan, you're Alabama, you say Roll Tide, or it's Auburn, you say War Damn Eagle, who just destroyed #1 Georgia this week. Yeah. So that was awesome. But I know what you're saying, man. And the only live pro wrestling the only televised pro wrestling that I watch nowadays and I try to watch it faithfully. A lot of times I wake up in the morning to watch it if it's on a Sunday morning. Like I just woke up just in time to see the main event of this last show, which was Tanahashi versus Kota Ibushi, and it was just amazing. It was so good. It's like, one of the things that I love about pro wrestling is it's violence without consequences, right? I mean, that's the fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. And when we were kids, we would play in the like swing sticks and act like they're swords and stuff like that, and we're killing these invisible monsters that don't really exist, and there's this violence without consequences, and that's what pro wrestling's all about. And that's why people love death matches and stuff like that. But I think that New Japan and the strong style, like main event stuff that'll happen, is the closest thing to a death match without a death match. You know what I'm saying? It's like this closest thing to that insane violence that you see, without consequences, so to speak. Although there is consequences, it's just it's delayed, or it's not as bad as it should be. And that match just reminded me of that style because I hadn't seen it in a while because they've been kind of, New Japan goes on kind of hiatus during this time of the year, and they do have shows, but the shows are just okay. King of Pro Wrestling was okay. This latest one that they had was just tremendous. Destruction or something, I can't remember what it was called, but it was just awesome, dude. Check that out when you have time. It was really good.
Yeah, if I have time. I'm like a season behind on Doctor Who and the Christmas specials obviously coming up on Christmas, and I gotta find a way to watch that. But anyway, I was gonna mention, like, this is how it's gone with me with New Japan lately. I started watching at Wrestle Kingdom, and I was trying to watch every show that lasted like so many months, and I torrented every single show that I watched. And even ones that I didn't watch, I still torrented them, and I just didn't get around to them. And then I think in August or July, I bought a subscription to New Japan. And I made the horrible mistake, and I wish someone would have told me. I literally bought it on the last day of the month. Not knowing that literally within about 24 hours, or maybe it was the second last day of the month, in 24 to 48 hours, I got billed again. And I was like, oh, really, you motherfuckers? And then...
motherfuckers!
And then, ever since then, I have not had time to watch New Japan, and I'm fucking paying for it.
Oh,
so it's time, man. Like, Monday night, I come home, I watch Raw. Tuesday night, I record, I almost said the Highway Indie Report, but I record Wrestling Cheers. Wednesdays, I record a CFL podcast with some friends, and sometimes a movie podcast with some friends. Luckily, I'm not officially recording it. A friend of mine is, and he does all the other stuff for it. And most Thursday nights, I record Hanging with Heavy. Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday, I spend with my girlfriend. Sunday night, actually, I don't. She goes home because we don't live together. But that's normally like my time to relax. Or if I didn't get to record Hanging with Heavy, I record it that. So it's like no time. And I'm trying to find ways to open up time. But yeah, that sucks. But
that last show, that Destruction show, was fucking 5 hours long.
That's what kills me. Like, there's so
come on.
Like, when like people bitch about how long Raw is, and they're like, "I love New Japan," I'm like, wait a minute. You know how long that shit is? Like, I like it. I'm not gonna not knock you, but like 5 fucking, or better yet. Like I said, I started watching at Wrestle Kingdom.
Wrestle Kingdom, yeah, that was a long show, man.
Which I think I divided it up over 2 nights, which was fine. Which my favorite match isn't the main event, still a good match, but triple threat tag match, Chaos versus Gorillas of Destiny versus Great Heel Bash.
Really? That was your favorite, huh?
Because of like how much they were cussing and how that threw off Kevin Kelly and and what's his name?
Would have been Carino at that time, right?
Carino. And like they're busted up laughing, and like someone recently was talking about New Japan who hasn't watched her. He was trying to get another friend of mine to watch it, and I just sent him the chopped up clips of the cussing in that match, because just how it comes out of nowhere. Fuck that shit. I hate you, motherfucker. Eat shit. Just like so fucking hilarious. And like I actually watched it on Access because I wanted to see how Jim Ross was going to take it, and they bleep it out and they don't even pay any attention. Like, oh man, that sucks. But yeah, you had that show, and then the next night you have that whatever
New Year's Dash or whatever.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It's just like, God, guys, this is a lot of fucking wrestling to watch on top of other.
Yeah, it is. And, I mean, the cool thing is, though, you can skip all the like 10-man tag matches if you want. They do a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, that's where a lot of the stories get told.
Yeah.
I gotta mention, I cannot pass up, an opportunity to mention Hanma and the fact that he has left this giant hole in my heart that he is not in New Japan, because he had almost broke his neck taking a DDT. Hanma, a Great Heel Bash, like you said, GBH or whatever.
I love Togi Makabe.
I'm okay. I'm lukewarm on Makabe. I love Hanma. Fucking love Hanma. Have you ever seen Hanma versus Ishii from like 2015? It's like they did 2 matches, both for the Never title, and both of them are 5-star matches by Dave Meltzer. I mean, dude, we are talking like, his headbutt off the top rope to the floor and shit like that. I mean, it is just bonkers. And these guys are, Ishii, of course, is one of my favorites. Ishii's just one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, period. If you don't know who Tomohiro Ishii is, then you need to learn, because that dude is amazing. But him versus Hanma, you need to check that out if you've not seen that. I know you don't have any time, but I'm just saying.
You know who has one of my favorite themes in New Japan? Well, great, there's a couple, but there's one that the first time I heard, I'm like, this sounds really badass. And that's Goto.
You like Goto, huh? With the he's like standing there in the waterfall, and it's clearly really cold. He's trying to no-sell how cold it is, and his like entrance, like Titantron or whatever the hell you call it, like his Tron thing is it's the idea with Goto is that he was a bad guy, or he was a good guy or something. He couldn't get anywhere, and then Okada beat his ass. And then Okada decided to kind of help train him and awoken the warrior spirit within, and then he just became mediocre, honestly. But he's a great wrestler. He just is one of those. He's the Dolph Ziggler of New Japan, where they always start with him. They get him heated up, and then he loses, and they heat him up, and then he loses, and they heat him up, and he loses, and he never gets anywhere. But at the same time, he's tremendous, and he's got much bigger pectoral muscles than I ever will. So.
Yeah. And like I said, fantastic theme. Because I don't know, it's just when I heard it, just how it's, I don't know, I can't describe it. Like I'm definitely a music guy when it comes to wrestling. If you have a good theme, I'll get gravitated towards you. And I heard his theme, and I'm like, ooh, I like
that's one of the things that drew me to New Japan in the first place. When, Wrestle Kingdom 9, when, you had, was it really 9? Jeez, that's so long ago now. You had Kota Ibushi versus Shinsuke Nakamura, and I heard Nakamura's theme and saw him rise up out of the stage with that, Liberty crown that he was wearing and all that wacky shit that he did. And I was like, this is my ringtone, and that was my ringtone for like a year and a half, So I'm all about it. Now, what do you think about Minoru Suzuki's theme? Is this not the greatest song ever written?
Like, I was listening to a particular playlist of mine on the way to Supercard of Honor, and even though he wasn't there, I got to that song and I just put it on repeat after that, because that song is fucking amazing. Like that one did take me a while, and then I heard about the story about the song and all that kind of stuff, and that drew me into it more. That's why I put Goto was just a little bit higher, but that is an epic song. Like, I think I had a big pop when you had it at the end of one of your episodes. Like, it took me a second, because sometimes that couple second intro, it took me a while, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I love this song.
Kaze ni Nari or something like that. It's just great, and that's one of the things too, just another little nerdy wrestling thing, is that one of the awesome things about New Japan is they do, I mean, sometimes they have bad guys and good guys, but for the most part, guys are guys. They are their character, and you can choose to cheer them or not. And so the same people that'll be booing the shit out of Suzuki when he's beating up, Yano or whoever, they will be the same people that go Kaze ni Nari, when the hook kicks in there on that song. So it's just nice how they all appreciate pro wrestling in all of its forms, and even though it's a good guy or a bad guy, they still like who they like, and that's just how it is. But that's something that's to be respected, and I really love that.
All right, we're getting kind of long on this episode, longer than I regularly like, so we do need to. When
the hook kicks in there on that song, so it's just nice how they all appreciate pro wrestling in all of its forms, and even though it's a good guy or a bad guy, they still like who they like, and that's just how it is. But that's something that's to be respected, and
we're getting kind of long on this episode, longer than I regularly like, so we do need to wrap up this episode. Any final thoughts or last-minute plugs that you'd like to throw out?
Absolutely. You can follow me at Drucifer Tweets on Twitter. You can follow the show at my show at the Road Home FW on Twitter. Also, we have a Facebook page, the Road Home FW from wrestling on Facebook, and we have a Facebook group. Also, you can watch me on Monday nights right before and during Raw at Drusifer Jones on Twitter, or excuse me, on Facebook, and do that Facebook Live, have all kinds of guests. And, go on to whatamaneuver.com, look up Wrestling Cheers, go ahead and buy yourself a t-shirt. But man, thank you so much. I can't express to you how awesome it's been to have someone like yourself to kind of bounce ideas off of, or just to say hi every once in a while. And the support in the wrestling podcast community is pretty great. When the hook kicks in there on that song. So, it's just nice how they all appreciate pro wrestling in all of its forms. And even though it's a good guy or a bad guy, they still like who they like. And that's just how it is. But that's something that's to be respected. And the fact that we've kind of partnered in a way to cover Ohio wrestling. You cover the North, we cover the South. That's been a tremendous deal. And I can't thank you enough for all the support.
It's been my pleasure. Been a fun road home from wrestling. Anyway.
Shut the fuck up.
I'm getting there. Eurovision Showcase, Legends on Siren Radio, TTN at the movies, and
shut the fuck up.
And my other show, Hanging with Heavy, and check out some of my podcast friends, such as Macho Man Radio, Chris Clem's Cavscast, Wingman Podcast, Wingcast, a Wingman podcast that is, with Steve Guy, Let the Hate Flow Through You with Jeremy Shear, Pod Van Dam, The Home Road Wrestling From, or Road Home From Wrestling, weekly wrestling podcast. Check out the official graphic designer of Wrestling Cheers, Moy Boy Designs, also thrift store Jobber on eBay. And why do I always say eBay? I need to write this part down, because I just have thrift store Jobber down on Etsy, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out our friends over at Rebel Life Media. And please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Spotify. And also Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. And one thing I've never mentioned, all this is in the show notes of the show. But hey, I repeat it to you just so you know. So thank you very much, Andy, for joining me on this lovely evening.
It was my pleasure, as always, man. I'm here for you anytime you need me.
And I guess I have to end this with thank you for listening to Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially when we record a longer episode than normal. Later.
Hey, man, that's what you get when you have me on, so...
Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Check out all the great shows here on the Trending Topics Network, such as All Beer Inside, European Uppercut, The Tuts Experience, Luchat, CFL Easy Picks, What's on Fight.
Shut the fuck up.
I'm getting there. Eurovision.